Streaming is on.
Hi, everyone. Good morning on this Monday, uh, October 4th already. It's 64 degrees, it's fall, but if you hang on a minute, we're going to get some late summer weather coming next week. I'm for it. So, what we're going to be doing is something a little bit different with reading. You're going to see more um, of a mixture of social studies and science because when you get questions about social studies or science on the task test, what we're really looking for is one thing, well, two things. One is the content that you actually know certain ideas and concepts. But then the second one is that you are understanding, you can comprehend what you're reading. So we are going to be mixing in more of those subjects. You're going to see it. So today, and there's going to be some overlap. So if you're not in science or social studies, you're saying, how is this useful to me? Reading comprehension, getting some higher level thinking skills in, um, being able to predict, give best ideas, all of those skills that help us to do well, perform well on these tests, you will be reinforcing. So nothing is given to you haphazardly. There's always a plan, there's a method. And so you just to let you know you're going to be seeing more of that. Keep in mind, however, some of these lessons will appear both in classroom in science and Spanish. I'm sorry, science and social studies. So let's move on. What we're going to talk about today is the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so I'm going to share this map with you. And the Cuban Missile Crisis took place in the 60s. And it scared the whole world to death. But more than that, um, it scared every American because missiles that were placed on the island of Cuba could hit anywhere in the United States. So this again part of the Cold War or a ongoing hostilities between the United States and Russia that could affect not only our country but the whole world. And we thought World War One was the war to end all wars, and then we had World War Two, and we had all those other battles in between. And then here we go in 1961 with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We talked a little bit about in social studies a dictator named Fidel Castro, who was at one time considered a freedom fighter when um, a man that we placed and as head of Cuba ended up being one who was actually he denied people basic human rights and he was overthrown by Fidel Castro. However, Fidel was a communist, and so that aligned him with Russia. And the Cold War, the war that is still ongoing in some ways, has been always between the United States and Russia. So I wanted to give you a little background for those of you who have not been in social studies about how we got to this place where school children practiced bomb drills by hiding under their desks, um, where people made cellars where in the case of the war that people could hide and protect themselves underground. So let's get a little background about this. And then I want you to see what we're looking for here in this lesson. So what we're doing is evaluating arguments and claims in the text. Is the reasoning valid? Is the evidence sufficient? Are the facts true? You hear this term all the time now, fake news. Well, all what in strengthening our reading skills, we are learning to evaluate information for its validity. Is it truthful? Is it truthful and is it real? So these are the things that we're looking for, the enduring questions, the questions that I would like for you to answer, those of you who are responding with homework, completing this lesson. What was the Cuban Missile Crisis about? Why was President Kennedy concerned? What was the result of the Cuban Missile Crisis? And the last question is, what was the importance of it to the whole world? Okay, so let's take a look at this lesson, which is really just a little bit of text and then some pictures from the actual time. Okay, so in October 15th of 1962, a group of CIA analysts working for the United States started to review pictures taken by air of Cuba and saw something they hadn't seen before. Soviet medium range ballistic missile installations where they could put missiles and bases that were within 100 miles of the United States. The State Department was notified that night, and President John F. Kennedy was briefed the next morning, setting in motion a crisis that brought the whole world to a brought them frighteningly close to nuclear war. Remember, we had dropped the bomb on Japan, so in World War II, so we knew the horrors of what that could be. Um, so for 13 days, the United States brought troops and weapons to Florida. They confronted the Soviets at the United Nations, and they set up a naval blockade where they took naval ships and would not allow anything to come into Cuba but items necessary for survival, for living. And so for 13 days, this crisis scared everyone all around the world to death that we could have a new worldwide conflict with nuclear weapons involved on both sides. And so on October 27th, the United States and Russia reached a secret agreement, one where the president's brother, who was the state attorneys general, drafted. And he would order, well, first, the United States would have to remove missiles they had in southern Italy and Turkey. Wait, what? You mean we were doing the same thing? And then Khrushchev, who was prime minister of Russia, um, would remove all missiles in Cuba. And so then over the following weeks, the United States watched this process as Russia removed missiles aboard ships. And the crisis was considered to be averted or dissolved. And so here are some pictures from those days, and where it says, we retreated from the brink of destruction. So here is President John F. Kennedy talking to the nation about the blockade where they blocked. And what we actually called it was a quarantine, though Russia said, how are you going to block us from doing anything? So we called it a quarantine. And this is where he's telling this to the American people. So he's here in the Oval Office, and here, as you can see, all these different news stations. So when we took the picture in October of 62 in San Cristobal, Cuba, this is what we saw. And we were flying over so on a regular basis. So when we saw this was new. So here is where they were putting the missiles together. This is where they were storing them. This is where they would launch them. So what they saw was very clear. And it says here that this is a spy photo of a medium range ballistic missile in San Cristobal, Cuba, with labels detailing various parts of the base. So we knew for a fact that this was here by photographic evidence. All right. So this evidence was presented. And when the site was photographed earlier, it did not have these things: fuel trailers, equipment. They've got the missile erector hiding under a canvas. And then there were vehicle trucks, cable lines to control the areas. So all of this, cable lines, the missile erector, all of this is new. So then this is where the president is talking to the Air Force about spy plane flights over Cuba to find out what's going on. And so here we go. This is our map of Cuba. This is where the missile site was. Here was the capital, Havana. And keep in mind, not that far from the coast of Miami. All right. So there's some more pictures, same thing. This is the president telling the people that there is a naval blockade against Cuba, and that the United States would come back in a full retaliatory response if any missile was fired in any nation in this hemisphere, because some of the missiles were pointed out at Mexico as well. So this is in the United Nations trying to talk it out. Call you back. So we're trying to talk it out. We're trying to work it out in the United Nations. And so this is the Soviet Union's deputy minister, Cuba's representative to the UN, and some of our representatives, our U.S. ambassador, Adlai Stevenson. Do you have to remember all of this? No, but you do have to know the major details about who was involved, what was the outcome, and what was the fear. And here is Commandant Fidel Castro, Cuban president, responding to the blockade. I know you don't think that he was very pleased about that, right? And so this is the president signing the quarantine, as we called it. Keep in mind, however, that there have always been people who are called pacifists that believe that war is not the answer. We can never talk too much when it comes to preventing war. And so there were protests. There were people who said, no, this is not acceptable. Peace or perish. Dead men can't negotiate. Be careful. Women strike for peace. Resolve the world's problems or our children will die. And when you look at people who go off to war, at those times, it was predominantly young men. These are some soldiers sitting in a dugout on the beach in Key West, holding position, being on lookout. And here are people in New York looking for the news. I mean, the whole country was terrified. We're actually looking here at Russian submarines. So they were right, you really could say, our backyard. And then this is a protest in England, hands off Cuba. These are members of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. People are saying, you know what, we don't want to see another nuclear war. We don't want to see nuclear missiles fired across the hemispheres, where we just don't think that that's necessary. We don't have to go there. So then you had rocket launchers on the beach. So can you imagine that time? How frightening. And finally, we got to a place where the United States, as we said, and Russia made the agreement to pull back. We would take our missiles out of Europe. They would take their missiles out of Cuba. So here they are starting to remove everything. And this is an American plane, fighter plane over the Russian warship. Look how close that is. Do you think that was maybe designed as some intimidation, perhaps? And they're taking down the removing some of the missiles there and aircraft. So these were troops and weaponry rushed to South Florida. So we were ready. These were in Miami and the Keys, Key West. Navy ships watching the Russian ship leave Cuba on November 10th. Okay, so what do I need to know? I would like you to know, and the task test administrators would like for you to know that the Cuban Missile Crisis took 13 days, that it involved um, Russia, United States, and Cuba, and it was considered to be the closest the world has ever come to war. So, know the result, know the importance, know why President Kennedy was concerned, and talk about and be able to know what the Cuban Missile Crisis was about. So, that's all we have. Take a look at that article again on your own. And that's it for today. And answer those questions. So if you have any other questions, please let me know. Questions are always valued and hoped for. So you all take care, and I will talk to you later. Goodbye.